Khadija Pfefferman, we have outlined on this show a number of incidents that have happened in the last few days that seem to suggest that the theater of conflict may not be completely confined to Gaza. The Israeli defense minister is on record as saying, we are in a multi-arena war. We've been attacked from 6 sides. He even mentioned Iran. And he said that we've actually acted in 6 of these theaters. The question really is, whatever Israel's public stance may be, do you believe that apart from the war that it is waging on Hamas in Gaza, Israel has decided to go after the Hamas, Hezbollah and Iran axis in the entire region, regardless of geography?
Well, a few corrections I think are important. First, the major reserves are retired. I'm not representing the establishment in any way here, just to be clear. This is a war that Israel, the defense minister said, is fighting on 7 fronts. And then he responded in a kind of coded manner that we have responded on 6 of those 7 fronts. And the hint is that either on Iran, Iraq, or Yemen, we have not responded, and he did not clarify which. Whether the actual attack itself was, whether the details of it were coordinated from Iran or just the big picture, it's clear. It's clear to us. It's clear to every researcher and every intelligence agency in this region, and most intelligence agencies around the world, that Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, they're all part of the Iran-backed radical axis. And in their own words, they say very clearly that they seek to disrupt the normalization process, the peace processes taking place in the region. Israel did not seek out, I think it's very important, that on October the 6th, there was a ceasefire from the previous round of fighting in Gaza that Israel had upheld. It's important to remind the listeners and the viewers here that Israel pulled out every last troop and settler from the Gaza Strip in 2006. Israel has no interest in escalation on any of these fronts, and all of what is happening is an Iran-backed campaign to pressure Israel, to pressure the West by pressuring Israel, and to tank and torpedo any prospects of peace. And so Iran itself does not have the military capacity to wage conventional war. And it's quite smart from a political sense in that it uses deniability. So it has built in a very sophisticated manner through the IRGC, the Pasdaran Quds Force. It builds this capacity to build, to train, to arm, to indoctrinate, to finance these various proxy groups around the Middle East. Some of them are meant to target and pressure Israel, Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, other groups that are being formed in Syria, but it also arms and funds and trains the Houthis in Yemen. It funds different groups in the Arabian Peninsula, in Bahrain, in Eastern Saudi Arabia, and of course, the Shiite proxies in Iraq. This is just part of Iran's MO, the way that it can wield leverage and pressure around the region while at the same time maintaining deniability. And rather than invest in battleships and tanks and advanced fighter jets, like do the other countries in the world, like do the West, it invests in these proxy groups. And so this is part of the campaign by Iran that is being waged against Israel, against the West, and against the moderate Arab states in a multi-pronged war. Israel is simply responding to these. And by the way, Israel did not start responding to these only on October 8th. After this attack. This is a Cold War or a shadow war that has been going on for many, many years behind the scenes. And the Iranian general that was allegedly taken out by Israeli troops in Syria was the head of this kind of foreign operation proxy branch, Mousavi, Iranian General Mousavi, who was taken out reportedly by Israel in Syria.
And any thoughts on the blasts that occurred in Iran? It's interesting, while you're talking about the Iran-backed militias and how Iran operates while maintaining plausible deniability, you're also not denying that Israel is indeed going after its enemies wherever they may be in the Middle East. Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, maybe Qatar tomorrow, because we know that Doha hosts many of the top leaders of Hamas. But do you have any thoughts on what happened in Iran, where close to 100 people were killed?
Sure. So the blast took place in the city of Kerman, where the memorial ceremony is being held by Soleimani. Soleimani was certainly no friend of Israel, no friend of the United States, no friend of most of the countries in the region, because he was the architect of the IRGC Quds Force for many, many years, and the right-hand figure to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei. Israel does not, as a general rule, as the way this country operates, does not strike civilians in other targets. It does not back terrorist attacks. It has been credited or attributed, or it has been reported that Israel conducts targeted assassinations or operations, precise operations in Lebanon. The Arouri killing is attributed to Israel. Israel did not deny or take credit for it. Attacks in Syrian territory. Here and there, you read reports of supposed Israeli strikes in Iraqi territory. Although Israel has never, and this is really not the Israeli MO, is to back in any kind of way terrorist attacks that kill civilians. This is something that Israel knows very well, has suffered. Israelis and, of course, Jewish communities around the world have suffered at the hands of Iranian-backed terrorist attacks. If we go all the way from Argentina to India, the Mumbai attacks, and of course everything that's happening in Israel and from Hezbollah. But Israel, as its MO and as an ethos in this country, does not conduct or does not back or does not condone attacks on civilians. And we truly wish the Iranian people no harm.
Okay. You know, you say that Israel, as its policy, does not target civilians because Israel has been a victim of terrorism itself. But may I remind you that as we speak, more than 23,000 Palestinians are now dead in Gaza in the 3-month war that has gone on. These are figures that have been put out by the Hamas-controlled health ministry, and they say that a majority of these, in fact, were women and children, and a vast majority were, in fact, civilians. Since you talk so passionately about Israel not going after civilians, and may I also remind you that the International Court of Justice is set to hold public hearings next week on South Africa's genocide case that has been brought up against Israel. Just for perspective, we need to keep all of this in mind. Okay, let me now go across.
If I may respond to that very quickly.
Sure,
First of all, I think charges of genocide are absolutely ludicrous. And the United States backs completely that Israel is not committing genocide. Israel is not target civilians. Israel is fighting an enemy that has spent 20 years and tens of billions of dollars in international aid entrenching itself in a civilian population, and there are civilian casualties. Secondly, I would take with a very, very large grain of salt any Hamas, as you mentioned, Hamas health ministry propaganda statistics. For Hamas, everyone killed in Gaza is a civilian. We know for a fact from very reliable IDF statistics that many thousands, we don't know exactly how much, many thousands of those killed are indeed Hamas fighters. We know that many of the civilians were told weeks in advance of the fighting to clear out. And yes, civilians are killed as bystanders in this conflict, and it is tragic, but they are not being targeted, and that is the difference.
Okay, they're not being targeted, but, you know, questions will be asked of Israel as to how it can justify thousands and thousands of people ending up as collateral damage. The war has gone on for 3 long months now.